Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Profitable Manufacturer. I'm Annette Delancey. I am the CEO of Cast Covers and She Makes Products, and my co-host is Jason.
Hi, good morning. Jason Snyder of Summit E-Commerce Advisors and Aspire Advisors.
And we are both very excited to welcome Gina Thorsen, who's the CEO of Stormy. Well, actually, I'll just let you say it because there's a little bit of a pronunciation I want to make sure, but it's CEO Stormy Cromer, and it's not Jacquard,
We say Jacquard. I'm sure if I was really French, I would say it differently, but we say Jacquard Fabric Products.
God, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Sure.
And I'm so excited. And you have such a storied history with your business. And so I would love to just launch right in to have you tell your story. I love your story. So go ahead and we'll just listen and be dazzled.
Okay, and there's kind of two stories that come together at the end. So my family's story is, first of all, I should say that we're located in a kind of a remote area. We're in the Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which is it's a place that gets left off maps frequently, and it's not heavily populated, but it's just this beautiful, beautiful place that my family's been here in this area since the late 1800s. And in the late 50s, my grandfather was here in Ironwood, Michigan, and he was a firefighter, and he worked 24-hour shifts. So he was 24 on, 24 off. And on his off days, if he hadn't had a fire call, he had slept at the fire hall, he was fed, he was well rested, and he was not the kind of man to just sit around for a day. And so I don't know why sewing was what he started, but he started sewing in his basement. And the first product he made were small zip top little like bank deposit bags. And he eventually got like a foil big press that did stamping so that the bank's logo could be on the bag. And so on his off days, he would be either making bags or driving around and trying to sell them to local and regional banks. He eventually moved into a building that had been his father's grocery store here in Ironwood. So old-fashioned storefront, with the creaky wooden floors. And he had one woman working for him sewing. And it was still pretty small and kind of a side business. But eventually my dad joined in the 70s. And my dad is an engineer at heart and a maker and a craftsman. And so when he joined the business, it really took off. The early parts of our business were a lot of custom fabric production. So like boat covers or upholstery, things like that. And eventually he was doing a boat cover on a big boat on one of the marinas on Lake Superior. And the gentleman had a physical therapy supply catalog. And he said to my dad, "Have you ever done any production work?" And my dad said, "No, but I'd love to give it a try." And so we started our very first production product was making orthopedic back pillows for physical therapists as a part of their practice. So from there, it just exploded and we really got into production sewing. We've sewn all kinds of different products for all kinds of different industries over all of those years. And then something else joined our business in the early 2000s. And that's when we added the brand Stormy Cromer. And Stormy Cromer is very well known in the upper Midwest. It goes back to 1903. It's your very traditional, think red, black plaid, traditional wool hunting kind of look. And the iconic product of the line is a wool hat that has this ear band that you pull down to cover your ears and keep you warm. So we bought that brand in 2001. And so since then, we've really expanded the brand. It was just a hat. Now it's a full outdoors product line. And so now we're both a manufacturer and a brand owner and a marketer and all of these things that has really evolved our business. And then the last thing I'll just say as an introduction, and then Annette, wherever you want to take the conversation. So almost a year ago, I took over as CEO. So we've done that family transition, which is fantastic. My dad is still very involved. My grandpa worked here until he was 93. So I'm pretty sure my dad's going to be around for a long time, but he's just taking some different roles and some different aspects of the business. And my sister works here too. She's our head of purchasing. So it truly is a family business. And I feel like we're one of those success stories. I mean, not to say that we haven't had challenges, but we have figured out how to make this thing go to the third generation.
That's wonderful. It's such a great story. And as a girl from Minnesota, I'm very familiar with the hat.
Yep.
Very familiar. So Gina, what was your journey to get to, I mean, have you always worked for the family business or did you kind of leave and come back?
I left. I wanted nothing to do with the family business for a very, very long time. I had lots of different interests. I was very involved in the arts as a kid growing up, and I wanted that to be my path. I went to college in one of the state schools in Wisconsin, and then after college, I moved to Texas, actually. So very different from where I had grown up, and I moved there with my fiance at the time, and now my husband of almost 25 years.
Wow.
And I worked for an arts education nonprofit. So we were bringing artists into the public schools in the Dallas, Texas area. And we ended up being very successful. It was a big organization. And I was a vice president there when we moved back home. So I had a totally different career, a successful career, one that I was passionate about. But after 12 years in Texas, number one, and my husband and I were back up north for a summer vacation, escaping the Texas heat, and was talking to my dad about the business. And it was really like the first time I thought, oh man, maybe I really do want to be a part of this. And maybe I do want to be a part of continuing this on, beyond my dad. And so, yeah, when I told my dad I wanted to come back, I've never seen someone's jaw hit the floor so fast because I had been really, really adamant about not being interested in it.
The classic, don't say I will never.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And how did your husband take the news about moving to
Yeah,
Michigan?
it was totally a joint decision. He grew up in Milwaukee, so he was also, and he was like a country boy born in a city. Like he's always wanted to be like in the woods, on a lake, outside. So it's been a great move for us.
That was an easier transition.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's just a great story. So, and what elements did you bring from your professional career in the nonprofit into the business?
I had had the great fortune of working with our executive director, was just this very charismatic, big personality, amazing leader when I was in Dallas. And so I learned so much just about leading an organization and also, building partnerships and, that really partnering with other organizations, other companies, other partners, other funders. Like, a nonprofit has all these different aspects bringing into it, but the ability to like bring people together and find common ground, I really learned from her. And that translates into any organization, right? Whether it's profit, nonprofit, manufacturing, service, whatever. So I just learned a lot about leadership, about partnership, and just, I don't know, what makes people tick, right? Like that's the thing no matter what. And the other thing I would say is that we grew really fast. So when I started working there was about 8 people in the office. When I left, there was, I don't know, 60. It had gotten really, really big. And so also I think I learned a lot about adaptability, flexibility, change management. That's actually what my master's paper was about change management, and just how an organization, like the people side of an organization changing that fast and how you can help people along with that. And, we've experienced some similar things here, maybe not growth to that kind of level, but like just the constant evolution and change and, even dealing with COVID and how we had to flex and adapt to get through that, like so many other companies did. So I think just a lot about the human aspect of running an organization very much translated to my work back here.
And how long have you been CEO and or back in the family business?
I came back in 2009. And when I first came back, I think this is another like good family business story. When I first came back, I sat in a cubicle and I did customer service.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, for about 9 months.
Every one of my employees start in customer service.
Yep, it was fantastic. I learned so much about the business. Also showed, that I was just not afraid to do whatever I had to do, right? But about a year or maybe 2 years after I'd been here, I really took over the sales and marketing for the Stormy Cromer portion of our business. So that's really what I've mainly done. And then, I've been CEO for a year. And I'm
Congratulations.
like a sales and marketing focused CEO because that's a little bit more where my expertise is. Although I sew in my spare time and on my own, so I certainly understand sewing and can work on the operations side too. So that's kind of a little bit how my journey since I've been back.
Great. So tell us a little bit about, you've got the brand and you've got the business as well.
Yeah.
You've got, and so you have, for example, the Stormy Cromer brand, and that's the hat, and you've expanded that line, but you
Right.
also do contract sewing. Tell us a little bit
We
about
do.
that.
Yeah, so we do contract sewing for a variety of industries, and obviously that stuff changes over time and different contracts. Right now, the stuff that we're doing tends to be sort of larger scale, heavy duty, and more industrial kind of things. So like we make covers for Boss Snow Plow, which is another great company here in the Upper Peninsula. So we make big covers for several of their products. We make, we're the manufacturer of a tent called Snow Trekker Tents, which is an awesome family-owned Wisconsin-based company that makes tents for camping in the winter. And we just recently worked with them to really prototype and develop a tent, a sauna tent. So a portable sauna. It's really fantastic. And that's been great to partner with them on designing that and now producing it for them. We make the canopies for a company called Rainbow Play Systems, which are those like cedar backyard swing sets. So those are just a few examples of the contract customers that we work with. One of the things that's been great in the evolution of our business is that as Stormy Cromer has grown, we've been able to maybe pick our contract partners a little more selectively and making sure that we really have great partners. And so the people we're working with today are just great businesses, great values. We're there for each other. We've helped each other out when times are tough. So that contract business, it's important to support, what we're doing. And it is kind of foundational to who we are. It goes way back to the beginning. So.
Great. So, and on one of our earlier conversations, you mentioned that you don't get into apparel sewing. So you focus on the industrial sewing. Tell us why.
Sure. I mean, that's a little bit of a pure capacity and kind of saving capacity for our brand, right? Like sewing a coat is very different than sewing a very large tarp, right? Like the tolerances are really different. The skill level is different. So it's easier for us to find and train people, even who've never sewn before, to sew some of these more industrial products. It's just not as complex, right? And there's typically not things like an armhole and curves and things that are trickier. So as our apparel sales have grown, we've wanted to kind of keep and focus our team and our expertise, for that. And then it's, like I said, it's just easier to find folks to fill some of those other roles.
Yes, I agree with that. And what are some of the challenges that you've experienced as a family-owned business in manufacturing? What can you, even from stories that maybe Grandpa told you or your dad told you?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. I think, from a family perspective, there's part of that. And I don't know that it's unique to manufacturing, right? There's family business challenges that are just there regardless of your industry. Like, can you have Christmas without talking about the business? The answer is no. No, you cannot. Right? So like, there's those kinds of challenges. My husband briefly worked here when we moved back from Texas. And after about 18 months, he came in my office and he's like, I can work here or we can have happy holidays, but we cannot do both. And I was like, okay, then. So he went and did his own thing, which has been really good. So there's, I would say there's those relationship issues, right? But there's also, when our business was a lot smaller, like as a kid, I remember my dad talking about big challenges. Like there was a time when a product we made for a bigger company was used by that company incorrectly and someone was injured. And I remember my dad being really scared about what that could mean from a legal standpoint. And so sometimes I say that my childhood was the best MBA that anyone could ever have, right? Because you're just hearing about it since I was a little girl, hearing about my dad's business and hanging out there and spending time there. So it's like, I don't know, the challenges, I think one of the things when you're in a family business is the challenges just get integrated in every other part of your life, right? Like there's no separating it. There's no, when the business is struggling, I'm not getting my new pair of Guess jeans when I was in 6th grade, right? Because the business was not having a great great time or whatever. Right. And then when the times are good, times are good. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Oh, absolutely. My father had a business. And so, yeah, there's no question what I learned through him was, as you said, the most effective MBA. And then my children learned under me with my manufacturing company. And just the questions that they're in their mid-20s now and just getting started in their own worlds. Just the questions they ask me, I know it's because they were exposed. So it's a wonderful education, but there's no question. One of my favorite stories, well, I have many of them, but one of my favorite stories, we were on a family trip that my mother insisted that we take or else, kind of thing.
Right.
So Dad had to, this was back in the 60s, I think late 60s. Dad had to find a payphone booth and call it a very specific time. And so we had to and so then we were just kind of playing in the car while Dad was and I remember Dad being in the payphone booth, calling the office and talking 20, 30 minutes. Every time, not every day. I think he was like every
a couple times, right?
Yeah, right. Oh yeah. So just the impact it had on the family. I didn't think it was that bad.
No, I got a great story for you that's similar to that. So same thing, several of our family vacations, we couldn't afford to drive somewhere when the business was small. So it was like, where could we drive to? So we had a vacation down by Chicago and, some of the different sites down there. But of course, it also involved stopping at a supplier's business, right? That was like, I don't know, somewhere in Chicago. And it was very old, just old school everything, right? And like it was family owned as well. And the grandma made lunch for us when we were there. And I was an extremely picky eater as a kid, like very, very picky. And she put down some kind of like meatball thing with all kinds of stuff in it. And like she put it down. And I looked at it and I was like, there's no way. And I don't know, I was little, like 8 or 9, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm eating this. And I actually like started to cry. Oh. And my mom is next to me and she's like, don't you dare embarrass your father. You need to eat this. Exactly. Like the tears were coming out. And so graciously, the grandma who made the meal completely like observed what was going on. And she walked down to the street in Chicago and bought me a hot dog. And it was the sweetest thing. But yeah, I mean, Mom was like, you do not embarrass your father. You are eating this.
That is a great family business story. Yes. How it basically intermingles with our lives. Yes, absolutely. So what are some of the challenges, family or not, that you've experienced that, your dad, your grandfather, that you want to talk about, some challenges?
Sure. I mean, a lot of our challenges, I think, are, especially if I think in the recent past, right, it's a lot of challenges that lots of people, manufacturers have, supply chain, moving materials around the globe, how difficult that is today, right? I would say, one of the things that I like talking about, because I think it's interesting for people to think about, but it's, we are mostly made in America. So our Stormy Creamer brand is almost all made in America, not 100%, but mostly made here. That's a challenge, right? Like it's a really big challenge. And there's a reason why there aren't a lot of very large apparel companies, for instance, that are made in America, because it's hard, right? From lots of levels. And so that's one of our challenges that we're kind of thinking through, like, how do we continue to be successful with that? What are people's appetites for price points and price ceilings? And, people definitely talking about made in America is one of those things people say, yes, that they want, but it doesn't always translate to like pulling out your wallet, right? Because you're, when you're faced with family budgets and, these are other things that I need. And do I need to spend 30% more on my hat or my, mittens or whatever? So, that's, I think, something we're really, that's one of our big focus areas, is to figure that out. Like what is the sweet spot for us with products that are made in America? Can the brand have some products that aren't made in America and, that add to it, sort of round it out? What does that look like from a marketing perspective? What does that look like from a brand perspective? And, because ultimately, one of the big reasons I wanted to come back is because I really admire my family's commitment to, employing people in a small town, and not just the employment, but then the fact that we can give back to our community, right? And like invest in different causes and organizations, and our tour has become a bit of a destination for folks. So then they're coming and they're having lunch after they take our tour, and like all those things. How do we continue to be able to make those investments in our community, as the landscape changes, as the economy changes? And so, I don't have the answer for that, but that's one of the big things I think on our plate to figure out is where is that place for American made sewing, and where can we find those kind of niches in the marketplace where people are willing to spend the dollars, on something that's going to last them a lifetime, and that was made by folks that look like the people down the street from you, right? Like, so we're just always trying to navigate that and figure out where we can fit there.
The community is, I think, an important part, particularly for a local business.
Yeah.
And having the employees live, work, play, eat,
Right.
sleep, school in those
Right.
communities. Tell us a little bit about some of the special things that you do in the community as a family manufacturing company.
Sure. Well, like, I think our tours are one of the things, like I mentioned, we get a pretty good amount of folks that come through to we offer a tour every weekday. And a lot of times I don't give that many tours because I'm just too busy, but I like to give them every once in a while. And a lot of times when you ask folks where they're from, oh, I'm from Lower Michigan, I'm from Chicago, I'm from Minneapolis. Well, what brings you to the Ironwood area? Well, I came for this. And so that's pretty cool, right?
Wow.
That we're bringing, like, people are coming specifically to see this. I think that's great.
So how do they find you? I don't mean to interrupt, but how do they find you?
I think a lot of them are fans of the brands, right? So they there's definitely information on our website about the tour and things like that. So I think a lot of them.
Good marketing, Gina.
Yeah,
marketing.
well, we're trying.
Yeah.
But then we support a number of organizations. I mentioned earlier that I grew up really involved in the arts, and so we continue to support a number of like arts organizations, and one being a new arts festival that's here in town. That's 2 months long over the summer. It's called the Emberlight Festival, and I'm actually on the board of that group as well. So that's, giving back isn't always about dollars, right? It's about expertise and time. And so it's been great for me to have my arts administration life come back and to be on the board there. We support one of the newer things that we're supporting is something called the 906 Adventure Club, which is getting kids involved in mountain biking. And we sponsor a number of a big cross country ski race in the winter. So a lot of different things. We're also pretty involved, especially my dad is involved in the effort to reinvigorate a ski jump here in Ironwood. So we tend to try to look for things that have an economic impact as well, to the area, and and whether
multiplier effect.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like I said, we donate money, but we also donate product. We have a full color 10-foot wide banner printer, so we can print on vinyl. So a lot of times we're just donating banners that events and things need. So a lot of different things that we can.
Very creative, and I hope that people that are listening are thinking about their own organization and how they can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that I did for my manufacturing company is I hired high school kids. We were their first job.
Sure.
And taught them how to ship, package, how to answer the phone.
Yes.
This is something that they did not know how to push buttons, on a phone.
Yep.
And it was very interesting. So, and note cards to our customers. None of them had ever written a note card, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So yes, there are many ways we can give back. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So what are the succession plans? And have you gone through the process, and are you talking to a family succession organization?
Yeah, there was, we did work quite a bit with both an attorney and a family business planning consultant out of Minneapolis, to get us through this transition that just happened. This transition was mainly in management. So our ownership is still, we're totally family owned. So both my parents are owners and my sister and I are owners. But like quite a long time ago, we went through the process. I shouldn't say we, mostly my dad did a very good job of thinking about this very early. And so like knowing what will happen to the business when one or both of my parents pass away, that's all been spelled out and been thoughtfully done. And there's trusts and there's, all the things. So, I think my dad was actually pretty young when he started doing, relatively speaking, like he was in his late 50s. And so these folks were like, yeah, this is on the very, like people don't think about this at this point. They usually wait until it's too late. In terms of the next succession, I don't know. I was going to say sadly, but this is the way life is. Neither my sister or I have children. So there is not a fourth generation of our family. So we'll have to think about, what that means, what that looks like. I do think, especially from the brand perspective, that we will be an attractive, business for someone, for the right person. And certainly I've watched or observed a lot of business owner friends and how they've gone through some of that process. So we're starting to learn a little bit more about that. I think, it's a long way off. I have I love working and I plan on doing this for a while. So there's not an urgency to it, but it'll be interesting to see what that entails since there isn't another family generation.
Yes, and I know that there are many organizations and people that look specifically for family businesses with their values, and as well as you've already got the systems in place, which includes the employees, which is so important.
Right.
Yeah, and so it'll be taken care of. But it will be an interesting, very interesting transition for you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Jason, do you have any questions specifically for Gina?
Not at the moment. I think you're covering the story, which is what I think we're all here for, is to hear people's experiences in their businesses and what they go through, because that's, if you will, real time, on the ground information from somebody who's experiencing it. Just another level of application for other entrepreneurs and things when it comes directly from somebody. So, thanks.
Yeah, Gina, do you have something you would like to close with or add before we close?
I guess I would just say, the summer is upon us. People are traveling. If you are listening to this from anywhere in the Midwest, come visit us. We'd love to
Ironwood, Michigan.
Show you how people do this, right? It's funny. We give our tour, like sometimes you give a tour and people are like, oh, I thought there was just like a big machine that you stuck fabric in one end and like a hat pops out the other end. And I'm like, these are real humans doing their thing. So come see us or check us out online. We're at stormycromer.com. We're mostly a winter product line, but we do have some summer stuff as well. So check us out.
And I also believe that with the advent of AI and there will always be a need for manufacturing products.
I agree.
That human touch. Yeah.
I do too.
Thank you so much, Gina. This has been such a pleasure and a delight. And I wish you the best, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Annette and Jason. This was really fun.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care.